Welcome to the Sacred Journey podcast. I'm Elizabeth Marth, and I'm a certified conscious uncoupling and calling in the one coach, as well as a certified spiritual and emotional growth coach. And my purpose in this podcast is to shift the perspective on midlife changes being something of a crisis to the truth that they are a beautiful opportunity to awaken and a necessary part of our life's journey. I specialize in walking with women who are experiencing disconnect from themselves and who are facing life-changing experiences. And as hard as these situations can be, there is still the truth that these painful times can be the catalyst that can change our lives for the better. Change is what ignites the desire deep within us to reconnect to our true selves and our true divine purpose. It moves us to step up and live the lives we are being called to live, reclaiming yourself and reclaiming your life. So if you are hearing the call to walk this journey, keep listening, because I promise this is going to be good. And remember, life is all about the journey, not the destination. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sacred Journey podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth Marth, and we are on our second episode of the self-abandonment series. The reason that I wanted to do this series, it is a subject in which I am very well versed. 45 years old and almost 46. And I have been practicing the art of self-abandonment for as long as I can pretty much remember. So, forgot I'm speaking into my microphone. Having said that, I have learned a different way to live, for which I am so grateful. So this episode is titled Becoming Self-Centered, which most of our lives we are taught to stay away from. We are taught that being self-centered is selfish and not what good girls do, not how we are supposed to act or behave. We are supposed to put everyone and everything above ourselves. And we do. We as women and as people are taught that it is godly, it is socially respectable, it is how one should behave to put everyone ahead of ourselves. So when I learned that there was a different way to live, it changed my life. When I learned that actually it is written, and I knew this, right? I mean, you all know this scripture if you are raised in the Christian tradition. And if not, I'm sure that you've heard of it, that the commandments, love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. So while I'm not preaching scripture by any sense, I am bringing it in because it is a very powerful statement that the divine connection is the most important thing, to whether or not your higher power is God or whatever it is that you find outside of yourself as your higher power, but that connection is the most important thing. And then the words, in order to love your neighbor, you have to love yourself. And we forget this. We expect everybody to put everybody else first. And yet we're a culture of cancer, disease, depression, anxiety, high rates of suicide. We are not doing this well a lot of times. And yet we just mask it. We mask it with consumerism or material goods or pretending or avoiding and self-abandoning. None of these things, as far as consumerism or materialism or any of those things, are bad in and of themselves. They're joy, right? I love things. The issue is when we start to mask, when we're masking because we're self-abandoning, because we aren't actually in touch with who we are. We don't know ourselves. We're not full of ourselves. And that doesn't mean on the spectrum of being egotistical and an asshole. It's actually when we're so full of ourselves, when we're so filled with our divine connection, and then with who we are, loving ourselves, knowing who we are in our worth, because we are creations of the divine, and all of us, our faults, our weaknesses, which are all judgments, by the way, but are everything. We get to love and radically accept ourselves exactly as we are. Now, one of the key factors in this is to actually create time and space for ourselves. How often do you actually spend time with yourself? I had a friend who I loved dearly the other day, and she was running from job to job and said to me, I actually have like 3 hours. She's like, I don't know what to do with myself. This is so common. This isn't a judgment. I hear that so often from women. They get time that their kids are at school or they have a moment from their business that they have no idea what to do with themselves. Busyness has become like an epidemic. Being overwhelmed has become the new norm, constantly filling our time. And we're sick and dis-ease because of it. There's a different way. When we are creating time and space, whether that is first thing in the morning to do prayer, meditation, quiet time, journaling, and it's amazing, but it's also being with ourselves throughout the day, being aware of what it is that we're feeling, what it is that we're needing, how to meet our own needs. That's filling our cup. When we can learn to actually listen to ourselves, what our hearts are desiring, what our souls are trying to tell us, that are divine messages from God, in my belief, our world opens up and looks entirely different. When we stop committing to everything that we actually don't want to do and let our no be no and our yes be yes, our world changes. When we don't get our validation from pleasing others, doing from others, needing their reaction of how good we are. Oh, thank you so much. Like when we actually start giving that to ourselves, our world changes. Our time opens up. When we see ourselves as the creatures that we are, beautiful inside and out, worthy inside and out, not because we're doing something, not because we are choosing someone else ahead of us, not because we are giving to the point where we have nothing left to give, our world changes. I don't say this to you having lived most of my life that way. I was honest with you in the beginning. I wish I had. I wish that I actually hadn't had a dysfunctional codependent relationship with my mother in which I chose her repeatedly over myself because I didn't feel safe and secure or even know who I was as my own person. That's not her fault. She was wounded and had her own things. So that's not a blame. That's just how it was in my perception of growing up. I was unhappy. I was miserable. And I didn't know that it could be different. I just thought I was supposed to live myself for other people because then their reactions would define who I was. Slowly started learning a different way. I mean, it took a really long time, right? It's only probably been 6 or 7 years that I have understood that I am a self, and 4 years since I actually have been putting that into a very messy practice. So I'm not saying this to you as in there's this unrealistic, idyllic way to live. It's not, right? There was a time when my kids were young. I was taking care of my dad with dementia. I was taking care of my grandmother who lived with us and my mother emotionally until then she developed ALS, and I was with her till she died. It's not that life is without issue or without challenge, but in that time, if I would have known that I still needed to put myself up there, that I still actually needed to give to myself first so then I could be the woman that I desired to be first and foremost for my kids, then as a wife, then as a caretaker, a homemaker, I had a design business at that time, but everything just got like pieces of me. Nothing got my full attention. Nothing got the full me. And I was highly medicated. I was filled with depression and anxiety, and at times had suicidal ideation. So when we say, oh, this is an unrealistic way to live, or nobody can really do that, that's bullshit. We absolutely can. We just have to choose. It's not that my life is issue free right now. My husband and I are trying to figure out our way in marriage. My kids are adjusting to that. I have a son who has his own struggles and a daughter who has hers. Life happens. And we still get to choose to become self-centered, to be God-centered, self-centered. We get to choose to go within. We get to choose to step into knowing ourselves, knowing our desires. It's a choice. Self-abandonment is a choice. Every time we choose someone else's desires over our own, we self-abandon. It's not that we are always going to choose ourselves in a situation. It is that we are doing it consciously and with awareness that we then may need to ask ourselves after, what can I give myself? Example, right? Concrete examples. As a mom, my kids are in activities, they're in school, their needs are very important. And I accommodate to meet their needs, and it brings me joy. There are absolutely times that it is not feasible, and it's absolutely times it's something that I may not want to do. So I listen to that and I'm aware of that. And then I later create space to then give myself what it is that I'm needing. And yeah, people might say this is selfish, but you know what? I'm a hell of a lot happier. My kids are a hell of a lot happier when I'm happy. The people that I'm around are a hell of a lot happier when I am filled, because I'm coming from a place of really have given myself what it is I needed. I'm not looking for someone else to validate me or meet my needs. I don't have unrealistic expectations on other people, because I've actually got what I needed from my connection with spirit and from my connection with myself. If you can begin to identify where in your life you are self-abandoning, which, by the way, doesn't all go away miraculously, right? Like I'm still seeing pieces every day in which, oh, I self-abandoned. Okay. And maybe that'll always be the journey. But if you can begin to identify the major ways in your life where you are self-abandoning, is it within a relationship? Is it in your parenting? Is it in your business? Is it with yourself personally? Is it with your health? Is it with your finances? Is it in your sex life? Where are you giving over to someone or something else where you can reel back and start to look at what your heart and your soul is calling you towards? How can this look different? How can you show up for you? That's the question. Again, this is a balancing act. It is absolutely where we are in that tender space of tug of war, where we're between ourselves and who we are for and with others. And it can be done. I'm not saying perfectly. Like I said, a lot of times mine's messy. And I'll say to my kids after I freak out on them because I didn't take the time that I needed to breathe for 3 minutes before I asked them a question about why I'm getting a behavior notice from school and they got a demerit. When I actually show up for myself, I handle those situations much better. I feel good about how I handled it. There is a different way. There is a different way. So, if you are interested in reading more about this, I have my blog post that is on my website, www.sacredfreedom.life. And I would love you to sign up for my newsletter that comes out if you're interested. If you're interested in finding out about my work, then you also can book a free discovery call on my website. And I look forward to talking to you more about self-abandonment and the different areas of our life that this shows up in and how it manifests in our life when we self-abandon. We named a few today, but we're going to go even deeper. So have a great week, guys. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this midlife journey together. Join me next week as we continue to seek within ourselves to find what we are really looking for, so we can awaken to all the bountiful possibilities that life provides, and then align with the beautiful energy of love within each of us. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All of the info is in the show notes. And you can check out my website, sacredfreedom.life, where I have my blog, videos, book reviews, meditations, and more. And if you feel so inclined, you can book a complimentary discovery call with me to learn about how you can work with me on your own journey of awakening. See you next week.